Welcome everyone, and I will turn it over to our cadet instructors to go ahead and begin with your class. Again, we are going to be recording this and publishing the entire class on our WAMA website. In case you miss anything, you can go back afterwards and go ahead and check that out. But without anything else, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our cadet instructor corps.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I'm Cadet Captain Josiah Bailey, as Colonel Gorham just said. Today, we're going to be going over new cadet recruitment and training. And so if anybody has any questions throughout the course of this presentation, please feel free to let us know either at the end or just throw your hand up and we can answer that question for you. Slide, please. Okay, so our training objectives are going to be the understanding of the importance of recruiting cadets and then obtaining the resources needed to recruit and train cadets. So this is going to be understanding how to obtain and train staff, understanding how to recruit prospective cadets, and then understanding how to create a training plan for those cadets. So this will essentially take you from finding and selecting your staff, making sure that your staff is trained, and then taking them and actually going and recruiting new cadets into the program and then getting them into a pipeline to where by the end of that, they'll either have their first promotion or they'll be set on a path to better fulfill their career in Civil Air Patrol. Slide. Okay, so why is recruiting and training important? So recruiting is how the program stays active. If we don't have any members, then what's the point of the program? So that's really the core thing there. If you don't have anyone that is willing to be there at the meetings or to be willing to be trained or to sacrifice their time, then what's the point of having the Civil Air Patrol, because there is no one there. We've lost 8,173 members since June of 2020. This is the largest drop in numbers since recording started. So essentially the recording started here and we are below that mark now. And then CAP's mission is also dependent on recruiting, as we have already covered. And then recruiting also keep squadrons and activities run better. Essentially, I mean, you have to have people to actually do things. So if you don't have anybody there, what's the point? And then also training cadre is important for their career. If the cadre don't have enough skills or the abilities to be able to train new cadets, then they're not going to fulfill those roles where you want them to. And then you will not be producing the best cadets out of your program as you can. And also giving them these skills will also help them not only in Civil Air Patrol, but also outside of Civil Air Patrol. Okay, so we have some jargon to go over. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we just have a few things about jargon. So the youth looking to join as cadets. So these are kind of like our pre-cadets that haven't yet joined the program yet. So these can be called prospective cadets or new cadets, kind of like once they've just joined the program, or you can also call them recruits. We'll be using kind of both throughout. So just be aware that when we say prospective cadets or recruits, that means that they're not yet fully in the program and they're going to be joining soon. And then new cadets is more of they're just brand new to the program. And then cadets leading the Great Start program. So this is the cadet staff or the cadre. So you'll kind of see it either cadet staff or cadre. And then the training plan for prospective cadets. This will be the Great Start program, the recruiting and training, and the pipeline program. That is what we're referring to. Any questions so far? Okay. So what is the Cadet Orientation and Training course, or the Great Start? So the CAPP 52-9, this is kind of your guide for the Great Start program that Civil Air Patrol has put out there for all units to use. And so really the main goal is to provide new cadets with an exciting, comprehensive, and educationally sound introduction to CAP cadet programs, enabling them to succeed quickly. So that's pretty succinct. You want to make sure that you're getting new cadets into the program. They understand what cadet life is and kind of what the program is and what they should be striving for throughout the program. And you can also look at the program objectives as they're outlined. We'll cover them here. Okay, so thank you. Okay, any questions about the general overview of the class? Any questions before we start diving right in? Hearing nothing. So as I said, I'm Cadet Captain Josiah Bailey. I've been in the program for about 4.5 years now. I've been to a few encampments, and I focus mainly on training events such as non-commissioned officer schools or basic cadet schools, either serving on staff or attending them as student. So I have quite a bit of experience with just training new cadets and bringing them up into the program, and then also training a few officers here and there, but I focus mainly on the non-commissioned officers. Slide, please. Okay, so to start off this section, why is having staff important for your squadron? So this is a question to the students here. Anyone can answer. So why is having staff important for your squadron? You can also think about it as a little bit outside of what your squadron does, but specifically for your squadron, what do you do why is it important?
They help lead cadets in a good direction that the program wants them to go.
Yeah, that's good.
Also,
Anyone
one of the
else?
main parts about Civil Air Patrol is youth leading this program and not adults leading the program.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's really a key thing there. If you want to make sure that your cadets are actually leading the program, and if the senior members are always the ones that are kind of out there leading the younger cadets, then the cadets will not have the best connection with them just because of the age difference. But then also it's a little bit easier for the cadet staff because they're younger and they're closer in age, and they also understand things that are going on in each other's lives and things like that. You can kind of, if it makes it a little bit easier for the staff, for cadet staff to. So the key thing here is just to make sure that when you have staff, it's really important for them to understand the goals of your program with the staff or with the training, and also why why they're important to your squadron. If they don't understand why they're there, then they're not going to fulfill their job as best as they can because they don't feel like they're especially needed, especially if you just kind of put them in a role and you're like, oh yeah, you're the first sergeant now, but then you don't actually utilize the first sergeant. They're going to feel like they're unwanted. Next slide, please. Okay, so obtaining staff. You can find staff a few different ways. You can hold a staff selection where you can set up a cover letter and resume and an application system. So you could have like a Google form and you just have the cadets fill out the form and attach the cover letter and resume, and then you can review all of those applications. If you have a large squadron, I would recommend using this because it's a little bit more organized instead of just having a bunch of email or just like a few emails in your inbox from cadets for their application. Because the larger your squadron is, the more formal you're going to want to make things. So then it makes it easier for you on the tail end to actually record all of that data and actually make sure that you're getting all the cadets through the program and actually selected on staff. You can also use the staff already selected. If you kind of have a smaller squadron, then you can see, oh, we already have some staff selected here. We just need to add like maybe 1 or 2 cadets here. And then you can build up from that. And that's really your key thing. If you have a few cadets that have been at the squadron for a long time, they're probably going to be more like the cadet deputy commander or the cadet commander. And then from there, the newer cadets, they're going to be holding first sergeant or flight commander, those other roles that still need to be filled within your squadron. And as I mentioned, having a smaller squadron is a little bit easier because you know all of the cadets a little bit more, instead of a really big squadron where you have a lot of cadets and you have a lot of different areas that people are focusing on. And so you're not really going to have a huge relationship with the cadets down on the front line. So then you don't know what their skills or their abilities are. So that's why having a little bit more of a formal process for applications is really nice for a larger squadron. Okay, so the two key areas to focus on is finding your squadron that are willing to teach and mentor new cadets. If you just grab any random cadet and you're like, okay, you're going to be the flight sergeant now, but they joined the program for like aerospace, or they joined it for emergency services, and they're not really interested in the leadership or the training aspects of it, then they're not going to fully jump into that role because that's not why they're there. So that's where you kind of have to know why they joined the program, and then also understanding, oh, you have some skills and abilities here in leadership, and we want to kind of utilize those, and just kind of giving them a little bit of a nudge into that role, even if they don't feel like they're totally ready. So that's where being a cadet commander or a cadet deputy commander, having the ability to evaluate your staff and understand what abilities and skills that they have and how they can perform the job is super crucial. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fully utilize them in that position. Next slide, please. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything? Okay. So evaluating in person versus a virtual setting. So this thing is pretty new because of everything that we're going through right now. So kind of an in-person setting, it's definitely a little easier to evaluate the staff on how they perform their job, especially when you're doing drill and ceremonies or customs and courtesies or uniform inspections. Those things are really key to evaluating how they're actually performing out on the job or out on the drill field. Whereas in a virtual sense, those things aren't really there. And so you can't really evaluate them on that. And you can also put them in a little bit more stressful situation in an in-person setting where they have to get things done in a little bit faster time. So then you can actually see how they're performing under stress. And you can do this online, but it's still a little bit difficult. So it really depends on what your squadron wants to do and how you want to evaluate your staff. Okay, so then in a virtual, so in a virtual setting, you have to make sure that you know your cadets and you actually have a good relationship with the cadets farther down the chain, especially if you're the cadet commander or the deputy commander, and just understanding their skills and abilities and being able to fulfill those roles. So making sure that you kind of you send an email to them and you kind of follow up with them through the email, or if you connect to them with social media or different things like that, just kind of staying connected and actually trying to keep a relationship going instead of it being like, oh, okay, yeah, that's just the person that emails me once a week telling me to do all these things. They're a big meanie because they're telling me to do these things and I don't want to do them. But overall, the big thing is just knowing your cadets and providing the cadets with feedback. I know I've been to a few events where you can kind of tell how people that want to excel in the program is when they come to you and ask for feedback. That's a big thing. If you just if you give them assignment, a perfect example is I was the ATS flight commander for the Winter Raptor encampment this past year, Winter Raptor 4, and we had the cadets do a cover letter and a resume during encampment. And so we did get a lot of them back, and we gave them some feedback, but we weren't able to give all of the feedback that we wanted to all of the cadets because we were limited on time. So you could really tell when there was a cadet who wanted to excel in the program, and they would actually come to us and be like, hey, I want feedback on this cover letter resume because you didn't give it to me. I even got an email from someone after the event and being like, hey, I didn't get any feedback on this. Can you please give me feedback? And those are really the cadets that kind of stand out apart from the other ones because they're actually wanting to get that feedback to be able to excel. And so that's a really big thing. If you see a cadet that's like, hey, give me feedback, then you might want to pay attention to them and be like, hey, they're actually willing to put in the extra time to send me that email and ask. Next slide, please. Okay, so another question. How is your squadron selected staff in a virtual environment? So we kind of covered what you can do, but for any squadrons that have done it, or have you done it, what have you done to make that transition easy? I understand this might be a little bit of a tougher question because not all squadrons have done this, especially now because it's online and things are a little bit less formal, but has anybody had any experience with kind of selecting staff in a virtual environment?
Yes, sir. Right now, we're just having like a Google Doc, and then they apply for what they want within that Google Doc, and then multiple people apply for that position. Then we ask for a cover letter and resume.
Okay, yeah, that's a super simple program where you just kind of have them apply, cover letter and resume, and it's easy. Okay, if anybody else doesn't have anything, then we'll just move on.
One thing my squadron did too is that we set up one-on-one interviews with people just to get a little bit of that staff interview experience. So that way, even though less people are applying and the positions are less competitive, they still get that experience with doing those interview processes, so they can get a little bit more experience there too.
Yeah, and that just reminded me, even if you have a smaller squadron, you can still have a formal process for applications where it's not just kind of like that kind of, I guess, buddy system with your squadron. If you want to actually set up a nice program to where when you pass the program off, especially if you're the cadet commander, when you pass the program off to someone else, then you already have that program in place. And so then it makes it easier for selecting staff. So keep that in mind. You don't have to just have it for a large squadron. You can also have it for a small squadron. You might get some complaints from the cadets because they have to go through this formal process and you already know them, yada, yada, yada. But giving them that experience at your squadron level will help them at a wing level or a national level if they're applying for bigger events where it's going to be a little bit more competitive. So then having that ability to do a phone interview or submit a cover letter and a resume, those are really key things. Thank you, sir. All right, next slide, please. Okay, training staff. So training is extremely crucial for a successful execution. This is really key, especially if you want to have an end state where your cadets are trained up and ready to go. Not just your cadre, but the actual prospective cadets that are coming into the program. So at the end of that, if you don't have the training for your staff, then they're not going to know what to do with the new cadets that are coming into the program. So you're essentially training the trainer because they're going to be teaching all of these things to the new cadets that are coming into the program. So they should already know kind of the basic things: drill, uniforms, customs and courtesies, inspections, all of those things, kind of those core things that make up the program. But as the cadet commander or the deputy commander or whoever you are selecting staff, you want to make sure that you're training them and giving them skills, not just the information to teach to the cadets. So giving them like good communication skills or leadership skills, or just those different things that will help them successfully complete the mission. Those are all really crucial. And the big thing is to make sure that they understand the overall mission. If you have just a bunch of cadets and you're like, okay, well, we're going to have like recruits coming in and we're going to have them go through this pipeline, but you actually don't explain the why behind it, then your staff is going to kind of feel purposeless because they don't understand, like, wait, why am I putting all this time into actually making this program? And so making sure that you explain, this is where we want our cadets to come out. We want them to have the Airman First Class rank at the end of this program. Setting those kind of objectives, and then also making sure they understand what their role specifically is really, really important. Yeah, so as I covered, making sure that they understand the role of their position, that's really crucial. And then also intensity. I know going from kind of an encampment setting to a squadron setting, they say leave encampment at encampment, but I know a lot of cadets, they bring it back to their squadrons and they try and replicate that intensity, but that's really not what you want to do. You want to make sure that you have intensity at the right moments, but you don't want to overuse it, and then your squadron will kind of be that more very rigid structure that's more of like an encampment setting, and that could push some cadets away if they're not really interested in that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so training at a squadron versus a wing. So a wing can provide training such as a non-commissioned officer school, which actually the WAMA is helping with at the end of this month. And also just other trainings such as the Oregon Wing has the cadet staff seminar. And with that, we just teach a lot of classes about what staff should actually be doing. And it's more of a discussion where we kind of have a topic and we just discuss it throughout, like what all of our squadrons do. And so we're actually sharing information instead of it just being there's one person and they're going to be teaching, they're just going to be giving you information about these things. You're actually conversing with other cadets from around the wing or from surrounding wings. And then at squadrons, this is more of your just kind of regular training that you might have during a regular meeting, where you're going to be pulling your cadets aside and be like, hey, we're going to go over this topic tonight, and just getting through those training things that you need to get through, so then you can give them the skills that they can help with their cadets. So either way is useful. It just depends on your squadron size. I know you can also do a combined where you can have it at a squadron level and you can combine with other squadrons in your area and have training overall instead of just having training for your squadron of 10 cadets and like 4 staff. So you can also just reach out to other squadrons and make sure that you're connecting. Any questions on that? Okay, so kind of a final question. How have you trained staff in a virtual setting? So anybody have any experience with kind of training any cadets at their home squadrons or at a wing level event?
I know one thing the Renton Composite Squadron does is sometimes on Sundays before our staff briefings, we'll do like a mini staff lesson and just, teach the lessons that upper level NCOs should know, and that might be new to some lower level NCOs that we have on staff. But just so the higher level staff has more experience teaching classes, and then the lower level staff actually learns things that will be vital to them moving forward through weekly meetings and stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely one way you can go about it, where you just kind of have a class and they can teach it. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Our squadron does something pretty similar where we have staff training days ever so often, and we go over the basics of what staff members should know. Also, in terms of individual staff members, I know when I get a new staff member that I'm in charge of, I make it a point to individually meet with them to make sure that they understand their roles. And after that, it's really just feedback. So I see them present in class, I give them feedback on it. I also help them through any projects that they're working on, and really making sure that you're DMing them and emailing them and calling them if necessary to maintain that connection, as Captain Bailey was talking about earlier, and also to continue the training even when online.
Yeah, that's really crucial. And it doesn't, the instruction doesn't have to come from like the cadet commander or the deputy commander specifically. It can also come from lower levels. So for example, if you have a flight commander and a flight sergeant, then the flight commander can help mentor the flight sergeant through their role just by keeping a connection with them, and then also helping them with any programs or documents that they're working on or anything like that. Anyone else? Okay, then this will conclude my section, and I'm going to pass it off to Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge on recruiting cadets. Ma'am?
Thank you, sir. So I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge. I am from Fort Vancouver. I have helped train new cadets for 3 years and have been in charge of training new cadets for almost 2.5. I'm also the cadet recruiting and retention officer, so I have a lot of experience in this. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So for the first step for recruiting cadets, like virtually, is you need to make a social media presence. So we post wing and national events. I know like this weekend is the CPC in California. So just make a presence of things that are going on that you couldn't typically go to if you're in person, and that might be interest to some of the other cadets. Post about your cadets' achievements, so promotions, any ribbons they may get, like the community service, the red service ribbon. That's pretty important because they can see, like, especially new cadets can see, like, this is what the cadets who are in the squadron are doing. I want to do something like that. Invite guest speakers and invite the community. So our squadron has had like NASA come, a couple of people from NASA talk. That was really cool. And we've had invited some people from like friends of cadets, and they ended up joining because they really enjoyed it. So just try to find some cool people and just open it up to more than just your squadron. Tell people like at school if they want to listen to it, they can come. Yeah, and then stay up to date, especially right now on the COVID guidelines. So plan like you're gonna be in person soon on top of your basic, like your online format. So for UTAs, I don't know if your guys' squadron has that. It's a Saturday event that our squadron does. We're planning in person on top of online. So how are we going to transfer this if we can meet in person? Yeah, so do whatever you're allowed to do. If you can only meet with a couple people. I know one of the things we're doing is, yeah, he's change to the next slide, please. Thank you. So then to recruit in person, cadets in person, is create appealing flyers. We have a flyer that we would hang up at grocery stores and stuff, and it's cadets like rappelling and flight academies and some really cool things that you can do if you're a cadet. And that's gotten a lot of attention, and we got a couple cadets out of that. And then yeah, design an open house. That'll be talked about more later, but you want to have, you don't want to just have them come in and not talk to them or anything. You want to have something specific for them. Yeah, and then reach out to local schools and businesses. You can get their principals to talk about it. Try to get a color guard at basketball games or football games. A lot of JROTC units do that, and it's really cool to watch. Instead of just looking at the flag at the football games, you can have a color guard march out onto the field. Get interesting again, invite speakers and invite the community. One thing we did one time was we had a canine officer come in with his canine, and one of the cadets and one of the prospective cadets got to hold a toy, and then they go hide it somewhere, and we watched the canine go find it, which that was really cool. And then just put yourself out there as a community, like for community service, and if you can participate in any events and show that you're in CAP, people will get interested in that, and it'll be really cool. And they'll ask you about it, and just make sure you have flyers so you can hand it to them and invite them to a meeting. Yeah. So how have you guys recruited in the past? Anyone have something?
For my squadron, we went to a school one time for a science fair that they were doing, and we set up a table and we just had some different different science experiments or different kits that we were sent set up on the table, and that got some interest from different people.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
know. Oh, sorry. Continue.
Oh, go ahead.
I know my squadron uses an application called Peach Jar, which kind of is like a community thing where different groups or schools will post stuff onto like a Peach Jar board, and then it'll just go out to the community, and it allows people to hear about CAP and specifically my squadron.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one of the things that our squadron have done in the past is we had a school like bazaar type thing, and we had a booth there, and we got even though it was more of a selling thing, we got a lot of people talking to us because it was just so different than all the other booths there. So they were asking us about that. And another thing that was really effective was we had a stomp rocket thing, and it was at like a firehouse or something, and the community came and we launched rockets, and it was really cool, and we got a lot of members, even if they were young, saying I want to do this when I'm older, and then they joined, and that was really awesome. Danette Dreffner.
All right, so hello everyone. I'm Cadet First Lieutenant Katarina Druffner from the Overlay Composite Squadron in Washington Wing. I've been in CAP for about 3 years and a half now, and about 2 of those years were dedicated to training new recruits. So it's been about a year now where it's my responsibility to develop the training plan that the recruits go through and ensure that once they graduate, they're going to be successful in the cadet program. Just to note, the Overlay Composite Squadron is fairly large. I've been able to push about 75 recruits through the program. So this is really going to be one-sided with the large squadrons. So when your squadron is smaller, things are going to be slightly different. And I'm going to be pulling in a couple cadets who've had experience recruiting and training with smaller squadrons. All right, so before you actually start creating your pipeline plan, once you've gained the staff and once you've actually started to gain some interest, you're going to want to read through CAPP 52-9, which is the Great Start program overview, and really gain a base knowledge on this is what National wants us to do, and thinking about ways of how you're going to implement it at your squadron and how you might tweak some things in the pamphlet. Because keep in mind, this is pretty outdated. So a lot of squadrons end up taking the base information and what's in that and really tweaking it to work for them. Also, talk to other members of the Civil Air Patrol. This is a huge asset. See what other people are doing and work off of that. And then assess your squadron. In the past, what has worked with training recruits and what hasn't? How many recruits show interest and when do they show interest? And something that can help out with that is just looking at your unit's cadet recruit retention chart. So this can be found in e-services. You just click on the little statistics box and this should pop up. As you can see, this shows the gradual increase in cadets and then the drop due to COVID-19. But you can, if you take a closer look, you can also see that there's always been a slight increase of cadets in the early fall months, so October, September, so August, September, October, and the late spring months, so April and May. So taking a note of that, we might want to really push recruiting during that time. So after you gain a base knowledge, you're going to want to select a method of training. And the Great Start Guide points out a couple different methods. There's a trickle-in system, the basic cadet training day where cadets attend, and then a pipeline process. And then more information on the trickle-in system. To execute that, cadets will join Civil Air Patrol at any time. Usually there won't be an open house, and then they'll just join regular meetings. They won't be separate. They'll also usually hop into a flight that already exists. So there's really three ways of going about that, where they just join a flight and they're left to their own devices. They're treated like any other cadet who actually knows the stuff. That is highly discouraged, because if you're a new recruit, you're coming in, you have no idea. You usually have no idea how to do anything in the Civil Air Patrol. So if you're left to your own devices, you likely won't succeed and you're probably going to want to drop out. So I would recommend either the two alternatives where you assign an experienced cadet to the recruit that joins and mentor them through that. They'll still be sticking with the same squad with the flight in their regular meetings, but they'll have a mentor and a wingman. Also, there's the recruits joining a recruit flight. So if you have several recruits in a month joining, you can put them into one flight and have them working together to achieve their goals to ensure that they're able to succeed in the program. So Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge has some experience with the trickle-in system. So Colonel, do you want to talk about how your squadron has been able to execute this?
Yes, ma'am. So what our squadron does, right now, this is what we're doing is we have the new cadet. We try to find 2 cadets who are new, and we team them up and their wingman, basically if they join within like the same month of each other. And then we assign them to a senior NCO, maybe a lower ranking NCO, and that's their mentor. And so they still do everything with the squadron that we would do. So if we have character development, they would do character development. But they also have a mentor meeting once a week with their wingman and their mentor. So they go over the drill that they need to learn. They go over objectives. So week 1 might be objective 1 through 14 of the Learn to Lead book. And they just talk to the mentor if they have any questions. And okay, I guess character development was a bad. So leadership is what they'll do with us. And then character development, they go do their wingman course while we do our character development course. So they still do everything with the squadron. They just have an extra meeting once a week with their mentor and their other wingman. And it works pretty well. There are a couple times where it might be a little confusing, but for the most part, virtually, that's what works best. When we aren't meeting virtually, we have a flight of all the new people, and we try to get them to team up, but it may or may not work. That method might not work with the wingman and the mentor.
So I have a question. Is the mentor and the wingman 2 different people then for these 2 new cadets?
Yes, ma'am. So the mentor is a senior NCO and the wingman is another new cadet.
So it's the 2 cadets plus a NCO?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Colonel. And then a couple pros and cons to the trickle-in. A couple pros is really effective for smaller squads if you can't hold a huge open house or if you can't create this pipeline with a bunch of set staff members. Having this trickle-in system where you only need a couple mentors or a couple people keeping the eye on the new recruits is going to be helpful. Also, it allows cadets to really develop a bond with a few people and grow with those people, which you don't usually get in a larger setting. A couple cons, sometimes cadets will feel alone because a lot of times it'll only be them new or maybe 1 or 2 other new cadets. And most of the time, if recruits just come in squadrons, leave them to their own devices, they don't know what to do and they're going to want to drop out. So if you do the trickle-in system, you're probably going to want to go with what Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge Squadron does, where they assign mentors and really make sure that they're able to achieve all their objectives. Colonel Guttridge, do you want to add any more pros and cons? Or
I just think, yeah, another pro is, yeah, it's effective. It does mean that usually they are intimidated by the other cadets. So I know a lot of the cadets, I'm the cadet commander at our squadron, so a lot of them are scared to message me, and they won't. So you have to like try to make a connection with them, just because they feel like this is the person I need to talk to. I can't talk to any other cadet. So if you can try to get other cadets to maybe come to your mentor meeting and talk a little bit. And yeah, that's the only con I can think of. It's just to get intimidated by the other cadets.
all right, thank you, ma'am. All right, the second method of training is the basic cadet training day. So how squadrons would execute this is they would join the Civil Air Patrol at any time. Similar to the trickle-in system, they would join regular meetings, and then they would attend an airman leadership school or a basic cadet school in Washington wing or an outside wing. This usually occurs twice a year in each wing. So if a Washington wing cadets come in and they've missed the airman leadership school, they could always attend the Oregon basic cadet school. It's preferred that you combine this with the trickle-in or system or the pipeline method, because sometimes cadets could go several months without, wings could go several months without having a basic cadet school. And that would mean that cadets go several months with having no idea how to work in the Civil Air Patrol. So combining it with another method of training would likely be useful. And then Captain Bailey, you have some experience in this. Do you want to talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so basic cadet schools, they're really useful. I attended, that was actually my first event that I attended in California Wing. California Wing has a very particular way that they have events. And so it was very close to an encampment, I would say, for their basic cadet school, compared to the other ones I've attended in Oregon Wing. And during those events, they're really useful to just get cadets introduced to the things of cadet life, and really hammer all of those basic, it's really that the key thing that will help set cadets out throughout the rest of their career is if you can actually have a good curriculum and you actually hammer on the things that are really important. So then later in their career, when they're going back and they're actually having all these different questions on stuff, they can just be like, oh, I know this because it was hammered into me at basic cadet school. And so making sure that you cover the big key things is super important.
Thank you, sir. And then a couple pros and cons to basic cadet training schools. They're really good for smaller squadrons, again, because a lot of times cadets in smaller squadrons won't experience an atmosphere with a lot of cadets giving input. So if they're able to attend an outside activity with a larger wing, you get a lot of different perspectives, you meet a lot of different people, and it's just easier for smaller squadrons to manage. It also allows cadets to meet others from the wing sooner. I know myself, I didn't start attending outside activities until a year into the program when I attended my basic encampment. And having a basic cadet school would allow cadets to attend a wing activity a month after they join. So that would be really helpful for launching them into a successful CAP career. A couple cons: it can be logistically difficult to coordinate, such as if you need to send a van down, it's going to be hard to try to get that done. It's also going to be difficult to plan as a wing, because each time it comes around, you need to create an ops plan, you need to create people in charge and that kind of thing. Additionally, cadets who come into basic cadet school might not be able to thrive well in such a large environment, and they might also get that cultural shock. And then Captain Bailey, do you want to add anything else to this?
Yeah, it really depends on the person for that last point. I know a lot of cadets when they join the program, they're really uh, shy. I know I was when I joined, where you join and you're not really used to those kind of group settings. So it's just getting used to those and also having people around you who are going to push you. And that's why, like now, later in your career, being able to have a positive influence on the cadets that are coming in. And if you see that they have potential and just kind of giving them a little bit of a nudge will really help. So, like when I joined, I was really shy. And so I was made the aerospace NCO, and I had to give like a 90-minute presentation on aerospace. And I was still very, very new to the program. So that might have been a little bit too much of a jump, but just giving the that's kind of something to do, like, hey, we have a 10-minute block of time here. You want to teach a class on this topic or something like that. And then, I mean, specifically for basic cadet schools, if you're going there to kind of help train, then make sure that they're going to be a little bit more nervous because they're new to the program. So just being kind of ready and willing to help train them. And they'll understand, they'll kind of sense it when you have your priorities straight, where if you're not there just to yell and scream at them, you're actually there to help them grow. They'll kind of get that, and they'll want to help. They'll actually want to stay in the program. That's new.
I
Thank
have a
you.
quick question. My question was just, is there an outline or a curriculum that anybody is following for this cadet basic training?
California Wing does have a lot of these things already pre-planned out. I received a few documents from them, but I'm not able to share them just because of how California runs their operations. They just want to keep things closer. So I'm not able to share any of those things. But after looking at them, it's mainly just covering kind of the core classes. So like a wingman course, just kind of all of those basic courses, core values, the cadet oath, memory work, inspections, drill, all of those really core elements.
Thank you.
So could I just ask another quick question on the same thing? How long a period of time is this the basic cadet training? I mean, is it days, week, whatever? When it occurs, how long does it cover?
It really depends on how much you want to cover in the curriculum. So if you have kind of a longer curriculum list, it's going to take more time. When I attended my basic cadet school, it was a weekend. So we got there kind of Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and that went until a Monday afternoon time frame, or Sunday, depending on kind of what the weekend is, because they also need to fit it in with people's school schedules and other things like that. So it's really a balance. It really depends on how much you want to actually cover throughout the entire weekend, but most of the time it's a weekend. I know now most of the cadet schools are running usually about a day and a half with online classes, because you don't have like drill, which is going to take up like a few hours throughout the entire day spread out. So when you don't have that actual on the field drilling, then you only have the classes to cover. And so then you're actually just getting the key information out.
Great, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Right, and then moving on to the third and last method of training, the pipeline. So to execute this, it usually starts out with an open house. So that's the time for members who have no idea what Civil Air Patrol is to come in and actually learn about it and hear from people who have experience in the program. Then most of the time, cadets or prospective cadets who attend the open house are then split up into a separate training flight. Sometimes it's called Tango Flight. Overlay calls them RTF, so recruitment training flights. And then they stick to their own schedule, their own curriculum, and their own pipeline plan. It's recommended that you give mentors and wingmen. So our squadron has a flight sergeant and then a senior NCO helping out the flight sergeant. and then a recruitment training officer in command. And that's really the person who mentors the NCOs and make sure that the plan is set, gets the schedule done, organizes open house, and so on. And then wingman is helpful. So if you get probably 2 or more cadets, you want to make them wingmen so they're able to help each other out. Most pipelines are 1 to 4 months. The Cadet Great Star pamphlet recommends 1 month with a field day. So field day is very similar to an Airman Leadership School or basic cadet training school, but it's hosted by the squadron. So it's just a squadron going over things like the like drill and a PT activity, the wingman course, etc. The Overlake Composite Squadron used to do it for 2 months without a field day or an Airman Leadership School, and then we extended it to 3 months because with 2 months people were really cramped on time, and with 3 months they have a lot more time. We still don't have cadets we still don't require cadets to attend an ALS or BCTS or field day. However, looking to implement that into your pipeline would likely be helpful. 4 months would probably be the max because by then all the cadets are going to be cadet A1Cs and they're going to be working on their senior airmen, and you want them out of the recruit training pipeline because they already know what they're doing. And then at the very end of the program, at the very end of the pipeline, you want to have a graduation ceremony. So they feel as though they've been successful and they feel accomplished and they're able to move on with the program. A couple pros, it's effective for larger squadrons. So if you have the ability to create a staff of 3 would probably be the minimum staff members. Our squadron has like 8 people just dedicated to training recruits. It gives that sense of unity because when you come in with the whole 5 other people who are also new to the program, it gives that sense of, oh, hey, I'm not alone. These people got my back. It also allows you to properly train the staff. So the staff who train recruits need to have different skills than staff who train senior airmen, cadet senior airmen, for example, because recruits have no idea what they're doing, while cadet senior airmen already have a base knowledge of what they're doing. So you're going to want to make sure that the staff is probably is trained to be able to handle these recruits, not be too intense with them, and be able to give them all the information, not use jargon with them, that kind of thing. And with a pipeline plan, it's a lot easier to ensure that all the recruits receive the information that they need, because you have a set curriculum where we're doing this on this week, this on that week, and these are all their assignments. So it's going to be hard to end up missing anything. A couple cons. It is possible to form cliques because if cadets join with one flight and they continue going up with that one flight, moving on to staff and that kind of thing, you might get a clique, which is something we want to avoid in Civil Air Patrol. I haven't seen it happen, but if you want to make sure that you're avoiding that, splitting all the recruits in the flights, 2 different flights might be helpful. But looking on the other side of things, what our squadron recently did was have all the recruits in one flight move into one flight, graduate into a new flight. So they're all still in the same team. They have the same leaders, but they're considered in the basic training flights now, no more the recruitment training flights. And this flight has probably actually been one of our most successful flights. They've all been promoting consistently. They've all been attending outside activities. So don't completely discount moving up a single flight, but just consider the possibility of them not willing to continue bonding with other members outside of their flight. There's also limited outside squadron perspective. If you have a set pipeline with just your squadron and the staff isn't reaching out to other Civil Air Patrol members to get feedback on it, it's going to be likely that misinformation might be passed down, or you might be missing a vital part in the pipeline. And that really ties into the possibility to miss important aspects. And then Captain Bailey or Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge, do you have anything else to add on this?
I would say for the clicks, if you're trying to avoid those, the earlier you're able to split, if you can kind of see it starting to form, then the earlier you're able to spread them out to different groups and just putting them kind of more in even if you have kind of like a set flight of your more advanced cadets, maybe breaking them up as well and kind of separating them out instead of having, so it's going to be a little bit of a change for everyone instead of it just being the new cadets that are being distributed out everywhere. You kind of do it for all the cadets. So then they kind of understand how to connect and actually build different relationships or be a team member earlier on instead of getting to like a new event and having to adapt to all of those new things, because it definitely takes a lot when you show up to an encampment and you're on mess staff for the entire week and you have to adapt to that entire team for that entire week. And so it takes a lot of challenges. So the earlier you're able to actually get the cadets on that, then the easier it'll be for them in their career. That's all I have.
Yeah, what I'd say is just, I don't know how you guys do your meetings, but how we do it is all of our cadets, when we get there, we all kind of just stand around waiting for 6:30 to come. So and get your newer and your more experienced cadets to talk. So like tell your officers and tell your NCOs to find a new cadet and a different cadet each week to talk to, and get other cadets, like don't let two cadets talk every single week before the meeting, but make sure they're talking to each other to not get that click feeling.
I like those ways of going about it. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. And then any questions regarding any methods of training that we covered? All right.
So can I ask something then, Lieutenant?
Yes.
So
Yes, ma'am.
am I kind of understanding that your recruit flight goes for say a month or 6 weeks and then they graduate to a new cadet flight? Is that how you do it?
Yes, ma'am. That's the idea. They might be split up into different newer flights, but if the squadron only has one alpha flight, for example, they would just move on to that flight.
So you are also then keeping them closely watched until they actually get their airman first class?
Yes, ma'am. All right. And then if one of those methods won't work for your squadron, you can also be creative. So think about the fact that every squadron is different. So you're really going to need to take what's given to you in the CAP P52-9 and really tailor it to how it works for you. That's probably what every single squadron does. So you really want to make sure that you're reflecting on how your squadron works and making sure that the method that you select or the method that you create works well for your squadron. You can also look into combining different methods as well. So now that we went over the different training methods, what training method does your squadron use? So this can be like the entire class discussion.
I'm really interested to hear from Bellingham. I know they've had a strong cadet program for a number of years.
Yes, ma'am. We use the pipeline pretty well, like really strict to the pipeline. There's no mentors or anything like that. So we give them about 6 weeks in the basic, and then we do the wingman and all those, and then we split them up into all the flights. I really like that because you get a couple cadets from your basic as well as a bunch of new cadets. We've not really had a problem with clicks that I've heard of. So
Also, how many of these times do you start the pipeline in a year? And that's just a wide open question to anybody who uses that method.
I know
right
my
now,
squad. Oh, sorry. Continue.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So right now we do it, I think, either once a quarter or once every other quarter.
I know the Renton Composite Squadron does pipelines, but we call them cohort squadrons. We do them after every open house we have, and then those usually fall around once or twice a year, dependent on just the need for cadets as well as the how many cadets or prospective cadets we've heard ask to join our squadron. So it just depended on the time of year.
Another question for those of you who do the cohort method, what do you do with cadets that show up outside of the open house times? Like if someone recommends a friend and they don't, like the next open house is like 2 months away or something like that, and they still want to join CAP, what is your program for implementing them into your squadron?
The Overlay Composite Squadron, we have open houses pretty often. So, and most cadets know that if they want to join, they need to go to the open house. So we don't usually have that problem. And if we did have a cadet show up, we would a prospective cadet who looking to join the program, we would probably be like, yes, feel free to kind of join in and see how things are for this meeting, but you're going to need to come back when the open house happens. And hopefully they'll still remain interested and return.
Yeah, very similar to Overlake. We only allow cadets to join our squadron officially during the open houses, but of course, prospective cadets are welcome to come by and see how meetings look if they want to attend an open house but aren't near an open house. And then, like she said, we hope that they maintain interest until the nearest open house.
How often does Overlake hold the open houses?
Our goal, when we were in person, our goal was to have them every month. Sometimes that didn't happen, and we ended up having them every 2 months or once every quarter. And now that we're online, we're having them every month because we lost a lot of cadets, and we're really trying to regain everyone.
How does your online open house look? How's that?
I'll actually be discussing that a little bit later, but it's really just kind of screen sharing a presentation and having a lot of cadets come in and talk about their experiences in the program, talk about the different aspects of the program as well, and then allowing for a Q&A session.
Thank you.
So a quick question. Talking about the open houses and such, do you follow the must attend 3 meetings before a cadet can join, and that's in addition to the open house, or does the open house happen and then the 3 meetings, or if you get my drift there?
Yes, sir. So our squadron has the open house, and we want to make sure that they're going through the I believe it's 3 meetings that they need to attend before they join. Previously, we were counting the open house as that 3rd meeting, so they only need to attend 2 more outside of that. But when I was in charge of the pipeline, I made that to add an extra week just so cadets could gain another week of actual experience in the program, because the open house is just an overview. So you want to make sure that they know how meetings look like before they sign up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. And if nobody has anything else to add for this question, we'll move on to the next slide. So after we went over the several methods of training, the best method is probably the pipeline plan. And CAPP 52-9 recommends it. However, if you can't accommodate the pipeline, the alternative I would recommend would be a tripling system with flights, mentors, and basic cadet training school attendance. So similar to what Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge's squadron does, while also attending a basic cadet school. So now we're really going to work off how to develop a pipeline. And the person developing this pipeline is going to be the one who's in charge of the training of the recruits. Or it could be the plans and curriculum officer. But I would recommend it to be the person working with recruits so they can continuously tailor it to work best with how recruits develop under the curriculum set. So this person might be the cadet commander if it's a smaller squadron, or the cadet deputy commander. If it's a larger squadron, we have one specific person in charge of this pipeline. So to start developing a training plan, we want to brainstorm end goals and objectives, brainstorm needed classes and activities, brainstorm the structure of the pipeline, come up with the length of the pipeline, and really reference CAP P52-9, other squadrons training plan, and what your squadron did in the past. So basically, the developing part is really just brainstorming. And how we did this online was we had several months where there were no recruits in the training pipeline, so we didn't have to worry about that. So we had about 8 staff members with nothing to do. So I decided, hey, why not we make the pipeline better? So each meeting, we had about a half an hour brainstorming session where we went over different questions on what kind of activities do you think would be important for this pipeline, and then also making sure that we were reflecting on CAPP 52-9 and really building off of that. And so from those discussions that occurred probably over the course of a month, I was able to gain a lot of notes on what we could add. And we ended up developing a pretty successful pipeline, and we were able to graduate, I want to say 12, no, not 12. Okay, about 15 recruits as of February. Just a couple recommended things that you want to think about. You want to make sure that goals are really tied into ensuring that cadets reach that cadet airman, and that they're ready to enter the flights outside of the Great Start program. So think about it this way. You want to make sure that any recruit that comes out of the pipeline is ready for encampment. So you want to ensure that they all promote to cadet airmen, that they all sign up, that they understand military traditions. So this means that they know customs and courtesies, that they're not calling random cadets ma'am and sir, that they're actually referring to senior members or cadet officers, that they know when to salute and how to salute, that they understand basic cadet drill. So achievement 1 and achievement 2 is probably what you want to focus on. Then that they understand the different aspects of the Civil Air Patrol. This is important because a lot of cadets will come in for a variety of reasons. Some cadets want to get their private pilot's license. Others want to learn more about emergency services. Others just want to develop themselves as a leader. So you want to ensure that you're giving them this wide spectrum of activities in the Civil Air Patrol so they can really learn what the Civil Air Patrol is about. Also ensure they understand how to achieve their different goals, because as I said, each cadet comes in with something in mind and they need to understand how to actually achieve what they want to do. And then major things, keep parents updated. Parents are going to be the ones who decide if the cadet stays or if it decides if they just pull the kid out of the program. And if you get parents who have no idea what their cadets are doing, you're going to get angry parents who are going to want to just ditch the cadet program. So ensure that you're really keeping them updated, providing them with documents and resources, giving them the contact information of the cadet deputy commander for cadets or the senior member deputy commander for cadets or the recruitment and retention officer, so they know who to contact with questions. And then ensure that each recruit is building a bond with their other flight members as well as their leaders. Recommended classes that yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, could you give us some ideas on how you go about building that bond, especially virtually?
Yes, so something, okay, sorry, just a second. Something that our squadron was doing a lot was team building activities. So during the first month, every meeting, our goal was to have at least one 15-minute to a half an hour team building activity. Our first one was 2 truths and a lie. That just helped break down any barriers. Then we went on to the survival on the moon activity, and that helped get cadets working together more. And then we really moved on to just allowing the NCOs who are in charge of each flight to come up with team building activities. But these activities really allowed cadets to get to know each other and to relax with their flight members. And so that is a major thing, ensuring that staff members know that they can relax and that they can actually form this bond with the recruits, ensuring that when you're online, especially when the recruits come in, they know you as teenagers, so you want to ensure that you're kind of there as teenagers, that you're able to build that bond. Later on, as you go down the pipeline, you can kind of start creating that difference of, no, I'm actually a cadet chief master sergeant, and you're going to call me chief, and there's all these customs of courtesies and all this kind of stuff. But right at the beginning, it's we're peers, we're friends, let's act like that. Another thing, turning on cameras and turning on mics. According to this one study I found, turning on cameras and mics had the same effect in bonding as being in person. So ensuring that cadets are able to see each other and talk to each other is a major thing.
So another question, if you don't mind, you have on there, keep parents updated. How do you do that?
Our squadron created this folder with a whole bunch of documents that that parents and cadet recruits could reference, but mainly it's emails. So during the first month is the recruitment officer in command who sends out emails each week with, this is what we did during the meeting, this is what we want cadets to do. Parents, here's information that you might want to reference. So for example, after the first open house, we sent out an email with links to the pipeline overview, to the assignments, and the parent guide, so parents could stay updated on that. The day that we did the wingman course, we sent out CAPR 60-2, so parents could stay aware of the different CPP guidelines we have in Civil Air Patrol. So it's really when in an online environment, sending out emails and sending out appropriate documents and publications.
So if you were not on the online venue, do you ever have any meetings with parents? Live in-person meetings combined with cadets or anything like that? Do you have any?
We usually incorporate one meeting throughout the pipeline. It's now referred to as the introduction to cadet membership class, where we really encourage parents to attend, and it's instructed by senior members, and it really gives an overview as to the different aspects of actually being a member of Civil Air Patrol, how you sign up, what parents need to do regarding uniform items, what parents need to know about safety in the Civil Air Patrol. And then there's a Q&A session at the end where they can talk to senior members to ensure that they are remaining updated with people of their own age. It might be better if we incorporated more meetings like that, but currently we just have one meeting where parents are able to attend.
Great,
Can
thank
I
you.
add? Oh, sorry, continue. Could I add a little bit to that answer, at least from my own squadron's perspective? So
Please.
one thing that my squadron does is during our open house, we have a separate Q&A between the cadets and the cadet staff, and then the parents, and then the senior staff. That way, parents can ask like uncomfortable questions that they might not want to ask in front of their cadets. And then once the cohort system has moved a few weeks, I think it's on the 3rd or 4th week, the parents have another opportunity to come back and ask more questions, because they're obviously going to learn a bit more about CAP through their cadet, because they've gone through that cohort program for 3 or 4 weeks. So it just gives the parents another opportunity to familiarize themselves with what their cadets are doing. And so I think that's a very helpful thing to do.
That's actually a good idea. We might end up incorporating that into our own open house. Actually, any last questions on the goals aspect? All right, awesome. So the classes and activities really should line up with your goals. A couple examples: Achievement 1 drill class to getting cadets to get their cadet airmen. The CAPR 39-1 class and uniform inspection to ensure that they're able to maintain their uniform, which is a military tradition. Cadet wingman course, really going over safety and that kind of thing. Recommended pipeline length, talked a little bit about this, but 1 month with a field day, 2 months with or without a field day, and 3 months without a field day. That's most effective for Overlake just because it's a lot easier for us to manage. But I would recommend giving whatever length you do, it should be enough time for cadets to achieve all their assignments, to ensure they gain a good understanding of what Civil Air Patrol is, and incorporating a field day or an Airman Cadet Leadership School or a basic cadet leadership school would likely be best. Other notes, as I mentioned before, you want to have low intensity at the beginning and increase your intensity near the end to match up with the same intensity the other flights in your squadron uses. A heavy amount of team building activities in the beginning. Again, what I talked about earlier, cadets are going to come in. The main thing keeping cadets in the program is going to be the bond that they are gaining. I specifically remember when I first joined the program, it was a couple weeks in and I was like, I don't know if I still want to do this, I might not end up signing up. And then I ended up seeing a couple staff members like joking with each other and talking to each other. And it was such a small thing, but that thing was like, hey, I want that kind of friendship. I want to be able to meet other people like that. And I ended up staying in the program. So developing that bond and making sure that other people are able to see that bonds are going to be able to be made in the cadet program is going to be a major thing. Ensure that there's a wide spectrum of Civil Air Patrol activities, and you probably want to join the squadron for closing remarks or opening remarks, and just so you stay aware of what the squadron's doing. Couple other notes, keep a consistent schedule, consider assigning wingmen, creating documents, and weekly check-ins and assignments. So those will be like emails and phone calls to ensure that recruits stay aware and that they're completing their assignments. Develop a training plan. So once you've gained a basic list of different ideas to incorporate, you want to combine everything into a document or a spreadsheet outlining the pipeline. So I included a couple examples here. I'll send out the PowerPoint so you can view it after the presentation. But decide how you're going to structure the document. So do you just want to have a weekly schedule? So something like this, once it loads, is just a weekly schedule on Excel, and that ended up working for us. Or do you want to have it much more in depth? So this is something that I created. It's a ton of information, so it'd probably be better to condense it more, but it has the schedule for each meeting, how we're going to recruit cadets, a bunch of notes, and so on. And then this schedule is something that you want to ensure could be implemented for different pipelines. So think about whatever you include in this pipeline, you want to be able to ensure that it could be included in a pipeline a year down the line. Side note though, ensure that you are also able to be flexible. If there's a power outage and people couldn't attend an online meeting, could you be able to move things around to ensure that that would still be all right? And you also want to make sure that you are able to add in or take out anything that might not work for the cadets. So keep an open mind and remain flexible when creating it. Once you've created that plan, you want to get insight on it, send the plan up for approval. So send that up the chain of command so your squadron commander stays aware of what's happening on the cadet level, and ensure that everyone involved is aware of the plan. So that really is sending it up the chain of command and back down again. Here's an example of the training plan that the Overlake Composite Squadron that I made for the Overlake Composite Squadron. So as you can see, it starts out with a couple team building activities, introduction to cadet membership, a technology class, because our squadron uses a lot of different things like email, Discord, and we want to make sure that they're able e-services, and we want to make sure that recruits are able to use that. Then the second week is really focused on getting cadets ready for their Chapter 1 test and ensuring that they are on par with their military tradition, customs, and courtesies, and that kind of thing. Then the third week is really focused, third month is really focused on ensuring that they understand the different aspects of the program and tying up any loose ends with cadets who didn't achieve assignments or who still need some help with certain areas. Once you've created a pipeline, you want to organize an open house because that's the first part of the pipeline. So to organize one, you want to review CAPP 52-9. I keep saying that, but it's a pretty good resource when creating this Great Start program. Brainstorm ways to present it. So squadrons do it differently, but one that I've seen that's been pretty common is having this lecture with visual aids and then a Q&A session at the end and possibly team building activity for the cadets. And then consider running a joint open house. So Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Soley recently helped run this. So Colonel, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am. So I had the opportunity to help plan and run a joint open house for the Renton Composite Squadron, the McCord Composite Squadron, and the Mount Rainier Composite Squadron. So this actually took place on the 8th of this week, so just a little less than 5 days ago. And I would say it went very well. Like with most activities, of course, we hit road bumps, but as usual, we plan around those and we plan for those. But the one thing that I would pass on to you guys as the number one thing that I learned or that was reinforced by this experience is that in order to have a successful activity of any kind, you need to maintain organization and maintain communication. So one thing that we tried to do was share all of our documents as soon as possible. We used Google Docs because we can edit those live and see each other's edits. And so that allowed us to pass that information instead of having multiple different versions of a document with different edits. We had one document that we all shared. And then with communication for the senior side, we planned cadet parts of the meeting. They planned different senior member parts of the meeting. And then we would communicate and make sure that our times fit together and that our schedules fit together and things like that. So just having that clear line of communication was vital for the planning of it. And when we did hit road bumps or snares in the plan, because they're inevitable, it was due to that lack of communication. So just maintaining that communication, no matter how good that communication is between cadets and senior members, between different cadets, between senior members, it's always going to have some roadblocks. So don't ever get discouraged if something goes wrong. Just do your best to fix it, and people will ultimately understand that, hey, this was the first time you're doing a virtual open house, things are going to be messy. But I would honestly say it was a great experience. Right now, looking at like the sign up list, we have 16 cadets who've signed up in those 5 days. And there were, I think, 56 cadets who showed up to the open house, or prospective cadets, excuse me. And so we're hoping that we have high numbers of attendance from that. But just overall, maintaining that communication, maintaining that organization, making sure you guys have a clear schedule, having clear lines of communication between different staff members, that'll be vital for running a joint open house. But that's all I have, so I'll turn it back over to Lieutenant Druffner.
Awesome, thank you, sir.
Quick question was that just like a 2.5 hour type block of time?
So I actually ran a little longer. That was one of the critiques that we heard often was, I think it ran about 3 hours, but that's including like an hour of Q&A at the end. It ran from like 6:30 to 9 almost. So it was pretty long, but it was full of information that was pretty vital. And then of course we had multiple Q&A sessions for cadets and parents, just so people could get their opinions and their questions out there.
And an example open house would be what's attached to this slide, where you really just kind of introduce your squadron, go over what the Civil War Patrol is, how it was founded, the 3 missions of the Civil War Patrol, and then really hype up the different activities. So our squadron likes to take cadets who've actually attended an NCSA and talk about their experience there. Same thing with wing activities and basic encampment. And there's also videos that you could show, which will help emphasize different points. Organizing a virtual open house you want to develop that slideshow with information on the cadet program, or however you're going to present it, but most of the time it is a slideshow when you're online. Assign speakers and then set up a time to practice. And then once you're done, you want to send the open house plan up the chain of command so everyone stays aware. And then advertise the open house and execute their open house. All right, so that is the end of our class. Does anybody have any questions regarding anything that we covered?
I would like to ask, are there any virtual open houses scheduled anytime in the near future? And if so, is it possible that I could get a link so I might like to watch that or step into that and see how it all works out?
Yes, sir. So our squadron will have one in March. So I can talk to the current recruitment NCO in command because he recently took over and see if that would be a possibility. But if so, I'll definitely email you the link.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
And the Tri-Cities Composite Squadron is also scheduling one for March or April. So if you want to look to see what one looks like for a smaller squadron, or maybe you want to like pair up with Walla Walla or something like that, we can definitely talk a little bit more about that and see what we can do as far as helping out some squadrons on the east side.
That sounds like a great idea. And I think, as you know, we've been working to combine meetings with our squadron, your squadron, Ephrata, and Pullman. So that's something myself and Colonel Maxwell would probably like to really talk with you about. So yeah, let us know what's going on with that one. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, will do.
All right. And if there's no other questions, then actually last call for any questions. All right. So a couple resources, we created this list that Captain Bailey just sent in the chat. If you want to have the presentation slides, click right there and it's there. And then there's instructor contact. So any of us, feel free to contact if you want any help, if you want some feedback on the pipeline that you create or the open house or anything, feel free to contact one of us and we'll be able to assist you. And I know a major thing with contacting cadets outside of your squadrons, like, well, then I need to CC my whole chain of command, but we're not in your chain of command, so you won't have to worry about that. And then a couple squadron resources, national resources, and then online recruiting resources are also on there. Other than that, that is everything. And thank you all so much for attending. Hopefully you learned something valuable from this. And if you have any last questions or you would like to work together on a project, feel free to contact one of us.
Outstanding. Thank you very much to our cadet presenters, Lieutenant Druffner, Captain Bailey, and Lieutenant Colonel Guttridge. That was definitely an outstanding class. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording. And if Colonel Wiggs has a poll that he would like to put up for just what you thought of our class, that'll go up here in a moment. Our next class is going to start in an hour. Login will start in a half an hour, so it gives you a break to go ahead and eat lunch or whatever. But our next class is going to start at noon, and that will be our cadet application. So writing a resume and cover letter, that class is going to start at 1200. So that'll be a different Zoom link. If you sign up for that class, check your email. Colonel Wiggs sent out the link to join that one a little bit later. But thank you everyone for joining us today. We definitely appreciate participation from all of our cadets and senior members here at WAMA, and we will see you again for the next class.
Thank you, Colonel. And as you mentioned, the poll is in progress. And once it's complete, I will share it. Once I share the results, I will end the recording just so that it's part of the visual record in case you want to look at it. Looks like we're done. And here's the results. And each of you can scroll through and look at the results yourself. All right, I will stop sharing the results at the moment. I want to thank everyone for attending, and I want to thank the instructors for putting together a great presentation. It was very interactive. I really enjoyed that. As always, even though I preview the class before, I learned something in each and every presentation. With that, if there's nothing further for me, I suppose I should actually promise and stop the recording.